I'm Don Cornelius, and as always in parting, we wish you love, peace, and so.
What they do?
So me, first time meeting Don Cornelius, you know he was gangster now. Don't play.
People don't know. You got to do not know.
We approached him and we asked him to pay us. And the way he responded was more disappointing. When we asked to get paid, he kicked us off the show.
You can't really talk about black music without bringing up Don Cornelius, the genius and game changer who created Soul Train. That show is the stage where legends like James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Michael Jackson, Marvin Gaye, and so many more showed out.
Don Cornelius, an innovator, the greatness for bringing so many musical giants, known or unknown, to the airways.
But away from the cameras, there was supposedly another side to Don, a side that was controlling, hostile, and full of dark secrets that later came to light, giving us a much different picture of the man people thought they knew as Mr. Soul Train. Let's get into it. The rise of Don Cornelius. Don Cornelius grew up in a world where nothing came easy. Life had its struggles, but he was determined to carve out something bigger for himself. After finishing DuSable High School in 1954, he enlisted in the Marine Corps and spent 18 months stationed in Korea. That experience gave him a sense of discipline, order, and direction, a foundation he'd lean on later in life. When he got back to Chicago, America was already in the middle of major changes. The civil rights movement was picking up steam. Voices were getting louder. But if he turned on the TV, there was a huge gap. No real space where black culture was being represented authentically. To get by, Don worked all kinds of jobs. He sold tires, cars, insurance. He even put in time as a police officer in Chicago. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. By 1966, Don was 30 years old, married to Dolores, raising 2 sons, and living a stable but ordinary life. That's when he decided to take a leap of faith. With only $400 in his pocket, he walked away from his steady job and enrolled in a broadcasting course. It was a massive risk, especially with a family depending on him, but Don believed in himself. That gamble changed everything. Not long after, he landed a job at WVON, a popular black-owned radio station in Chicago, working as a DJ, news reporter, and announcer. His deep velvet smooth voice instantly set him apart. People listened when Don spoke. In 1967, he had leveled up to TV, joining Chicago's WCIU-TV to host a news program called A Black's View of the News. But news wasn't where his heart was. Don had a much bigger vision brewing. He started putting together live music events at local high schools, calling them the Soul Train. What he saw was simple. Black kids were hungry for a space where they could see their music, their style, their culture being celebrated.
Shows directly to the schools, high schools. Then the next thing that popped up in my mind was Soul Train.
By 1970, that vision finally took shape. Soul Train premiered as a daily local show on WCIU-TV. The production was small, low budget, tiny set, limited resources, but the energy was unmatched. But Don wasn't trying to just be a local hero. He wanted national reach. At the time, major networks and advertisers weren't exactly lining up to back a show full of black faces, black dancers, and black music. Don didn't care. He kept pitching, kept pushing. Eventually, Sears took a chance after Don convinced them that
it was very difficult over the years to convince advertisers and convince people that this vision that he had was something that we really needed.
Black audiences had spending power that nobody was tapping into. The gamble worked. Before long, Johnson Products, a black-owned company known for Afro Sheen, signed on as a main sponsor. That sealed the deal. On October 2, 1971, Soul Train made its national debut from a small studio in Los Angeles. This time it was in color, and it hit the culture like a bomb. Artists wanted to be on it, kids wanted to dance on it, and everybody wanted to tune in. It wasn't just a TV show anymore, it was a movement.
I was going to be on that show and I had to look right. That was the first thing I thought about.
Yes, that's what you get for having such a big hit, you know?
Yeah, I needed it.
The format was simple but brilliant. Dancers lined up on both sides, and one by one, people would strut down the middle, showing off the freshest moves. The Soul Train line became legendary. Entire dance crazes were born there. The robot, the moonwalk, moves that would go on to define generations. The show became a cultural time capsule. unapologetically putting black music and black culture on center stage in a way America had never seen before. The man behind the curtain. But while the world saw the glitz, the glamour, and the love, peace, and soul, things behind the scenes were a lot stricter. Don Cornelius ran Soul Train with an iron grip. He was a perfectionist who micromanaged everything: the camera angles, the lighting, the dancers, even the artists. He was known to stop a performance and demand retakes, no matter how big the star was. Some people respected that attention to detail, but others found it controlling and suffocating. And then there was the issue with the dancers. They were the lifeblood of the show, the ones who brought the fashion, the energy, the moves that kept audiences glued to their TVs. But here's the dark truth: they weren't getting paid. For years, instead of checks, dancers were sent home with boxes of Kentucky Fried Chicken and a few sodas. Don believed that being on national television was payment enough, that the exposure and fame were worth more than money. But exposure doesn't pay rent. It doesn't put food on the table. And all the while, Soul Train was becoming a massive hit, pulling in huge profits. The people who made the show what it was were basically working for free. Eventually, some dancers got fed up and demanded to be compensated. Instead of negotiating or compromising, Don kicked them off the show. One of the most famous clashes between Don Cornelius and the dancers who gave Soul Train its magic came from a young woman who would later become a Hollywood star, Rosie Perez. At just 19 years old, Rosie joined the show, bringing a brand new East Coast flavor with her. Her style was raw, hip-hop infused, and full of energy, totally different from the polished, family-friendly vibe Don wanted on screen. I just do. Don reportedly told her more than once that her moves were too wild, too rough around the edges. The tension between them didn't stay quiet for long. During one heated argument backstage, Rosie finally had enough. Instead of backing down, she grabbed her two-piece Kentucky Fried Chicken dinner and threw it straight at Don, hitting him in the head. That was the end of her time on Soul Train. She got kicked off immediately, but in true Rosie fashion, she left with her dignity intact. And in hindsight, that was a turning point. Being forced off the show didn't hold her back. It launched her career. Rosie would go on to become a famous actress and choreographer. But she wasn't the only dancer who pushed back against Don's tight grip. Demita Jo Freeman, a legend in her own right, was known for her unpredictable, electrifying style. She didn't follow rules. She set the vibe.
Here we go again with the Temptations and a close-up on Don and Demita.
During one live show while Joe Tex was performing, Demita jumped on stage unplanned and started dancing with him. The crowd went crazy, they loved it, but backstage, Don was furious. He was signaling for her to get down immediately, but Demita ignored him and kept the spotlight. That spontaneous energy was exactly what fans adored, but it clashed with Don's obsession for order and perfection. Then you had dancers like Shabadoo, one of the co-founders of the Lockers, a crew that would go on to shape street dance forever. He used to joke that dancers on Soul Train were paid in chicken, not cash. It wasn't far from the truth.
We approached him and we asked him to pay us, and he wouldn't pay us. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit. All we're supposed to get is chicken. We got a two-piece chicken dinner. And the way he responded was more disappointing. When we asked to get paid, he kicked us off the show.
Shabba eventually walked away, realizing he could do better elsewhere, and he was right. His career took off in movies like Breakin' and Breakin' 2: Electric Boogaloo. Another standout was Tyrone the Bone Proctor, who helped bring whacking, a style deeply rooted in LGBTQ+ culture, into the mainstream. His boldness on stage was revolutionary, but behind the scenes, he too dealt with unfair treatment and lack of pay. At one point, Cornelius even had to step in and cover taxes on a car Tyrone won from American Bandstand. It was a complicated relationship. Dancers loved the exposure Soul Train gave them, but many felt used and ignored. His feud with hip hop. And then came Don's biggest battle of all: hip hop. See, Don Cornelius wasn't just a TV host, he was a man shaped by the civil rights era. He carried this strong belief that black culture on national TV needed to be presented in a way that wouldn't scare white audiences or feed into negative stereotypes. For him, Soul Train was about dignity, polish, and proving that black music was sophisticated and respectable. So when hip-hop began bubbling in the late 1970s and early 1980s, Don didn't know how to handle it. To him, rap seemed too raw, too aggressive, and maybe even dangerous. He didn't see it as music with staying power, he saw it as ghetto noise. He once openly dismissed it, saying, "Soul Train is about real musicianship. This stuff will not last." Looking back now, that statement couldn't have aged worse. But back then, Don's resistance created some pretty uncomfortable moments on the show. Take Curtis Blow. At just 19 years old, he became the first rapper to ever perform on Soul Train in 1980, thanks to his hit The Breaks. That should have been a history-making triumph. Instead, it turned into an awkward, almost humiliating experience.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to old guys like me. I mean, I don't understand why they love it so much. But that ain't my job, is it? My job is to deal with it.
Don only introduced him because executives pressured him to. After the performance, instead of celebrating the moment, Cornelius said on air, "Yeah, well, I don't know why everybody's making so much of a fuss about this thing called rap, but you know, it's my job and I gotta do my job." Curtis Blow later admitted that hearing those words crushed him. Instead of respect, he felt brushed aside.
Never in my wildest imagination did I ever think that Don Cornelius would say what he said. My heart dropped to my feet. It devastated me.
The Sugar Hill Gang had a similar story. With their groundbreaking hit Rapper's Delight in 1979, they broke barriers as the first rap group on the show. But Don's attitude toward them was icy from the jump. Master G recalled how Cornelius looked at them during their interview and said, "Oh, you guys are intelligent," as if he expected otherwise. Master G didn't let it slide. He shot back, "Well, what did you expect?"
So as I'm talking to him, he looks at me and was like, "Oh, you guys are intelligent." I'm like, in my mind, because you know I was young and feisty, right? You basically trying to say you thought we was stupid. So I said, "Well, what did you expect?"
The exchange was tense, and even though Don later admitted their performance was good, it felt like he was forced to say it. The Sugar Hill Gang walked away knowing Don's hostility was real. The same pattern repeated in other pioneers. Eric B. and Rakim came on the show, and Don just couldn't get past Rakim's demeanor. He fixated on the fact that Rakim didn't smile for the cameras, but Rakim's refusal was defiance. He wasn't going to soften his image just to make audiences comfortable.
Rakim, you don't smile too much.
I ain't no joke. I just.
Then came Run DMC. When they hit the Soul Train stage in the early 80s, they were already changing the game. But Don didn't see it. His introduction of them reportedly made it clear he didn't take rap seriously as a form of music. Run DMC later admitted they felt disrespected, treated like second class compared to R&B or funk acts. But over time, Don Cornelius couldn't completely hold back the tide. Hip-hop had grown too big, too loud, and too culturally powerful to be ignored. He resisted for as long as he could, but by the 1990s, rap was everywhere. Don had no choice but to let it onto Soul Train. But deep down, he was overwhelmed by what the culture had become. Groups like Public Enemy terrified him. Their militant style, their fiery political messages, the all-black outfits and raised fists, this wasn't the polished, family-friendly image he wanted for Soul Train. And when gangster rap hit full force, Death Row on one side, Bad Boy on the other, he wasn't just worried about the music anymore. Now the actual street conflicts that fueled those records were spilling into a show. The scariest moment of all came at the 1996 Soul Train Awards. Suge Knight rolled up, not just with an entourage, but with what witnesses claimed was close to 1,000 Bloods and Crips. They weren't just there to hang out, they were looking for Biggie Smalls. The tension was so thick it felt like violence could break out any second. People whispered about the possibility of a massacre right there at Don's event, and the only reason it didn't happen was because Don Cornelius himself stepped in. His intervention kept the situation from exploding, but to him, this was the ultimate betrayal. He had built Soul Train to uplift black music, to show the world its elegance and power. Now, it had become a stage where beefs and street wars followed artists into the building. Don Cornelius versus others. And it wasn't just hip-hop. Don also clashed with other artists whose energy or style went against his strict standards. Take Rick James, for example. Their relationship was explosive. Rick was wild, unpredictable, vulgar, and completely uncontrollable. He was the exact opposite of Don's smooth and classy brand. To Don, Rick James represented everything he feared about black music becoming too raw and too reckless. Their interviews on Soul Train turned into mini battles. Don would throw sharp remarks about Rick's flamboyant outfits or over-the-top behavior, and Rick, never one to bite his tongue, fired right back. In one infamous exchange, Don had to eat his words when Rick proved him wrong after Don once predicted he'd never be nothing.
Well, I've been wrong before, brother. You know, I know I said you would never be nothing, but you know, now I gotta eat my words.
I said the same thing about you, and I was true.
Rick even suggested the two of them make a movie together, to which Don shot back on air, "You can't afford me, Rick." It was a humiliation that played out in front of millions. Over time, Rick James's appearances grew fewer and fewer until Don eventually pushed him off the stage entirely. Even legends like Marvin Gaye weren't immune to Don's controlling ways. Marvin reportedly hated how Soul Train handled his sound and performances. He felt that Cornelius and the industry as a whole interfered too much, tampering with an artist's vision in the name of production value. But these little feuds with musicians were nothing compared to the much darker stories that would eventually come to light about Don Cornelius. Controversies. To the public, Don was the epitome of cool. He was the guy who signed off every show with love, peace, and soul. He seemed untouchable, a man who carried himself with smooth confidence, but decades later, that image began to crack. In 2022, A&E's documentary Secrets of a Playboy dropped a bombshell that shocked everyone. P.J. Maston, a former bunny mother at the Playboy Mansion during the 1970s, came forward with what she described as one of the most horrific stories she ever heard. According to her, Don Cornelius, a Playboy VIP Gold member and frequent face at the mansion, met two young sisters, just 20 and 21 years old, at a dance bar in Hollywood. He invited them into his VIP section and later to an after party at his house. The sisters got into Cornelius's Rolls Royce, and then nothing. They disappeared for 3 days. When one of them finally managed to escape, she called for help from inside the Playboy network. Joe Piastro, Playboy's head of security, went to pick them up. What he found was horrifying. The women were bloodied, battered. According to the allegations, the sisters claimed they had been separated, locked in different rooms inside Cornelius' home, and tied up. One of them said she could hear her sister being brutalized. They described being assaulted with wooden objects in ways too graphic to repeat. And yet, under Playboy's strict no police policy, no charges were filed. Playboy's security team handled it quietly, silencing the women and warning them not to go to the press. Don Cornelius' status as a VIP never even took a hit. He was back at the mansion the following week like nothing had happened. P.J. Maston said she carried guilt for years for not speaking out, but at the time she believed nobody would have believed her, and that the powerful people around Cornelius and Playboy would have crushed the story. However, Don's son, Tony Cornelius, flat out denied the allegations. He called the story unbelievable, insisting there was no proof. Even the documentary itself carried a disclaimer that most of these claims had never been investigated by police or led to criminal charges. But for many viewers, the story left a stain that couldn't be ignored. Unlike the Playboy allegations, Don Cornelius did face real legal trouble later in his life. On October 17, 2008, police were called to his home on Mulholland Drive after a report of domestic violence. Don was arrested on felony charges, spousal abuse, and trying to prevent his estranged wife, Victoria Avila Cornelius, from filing a report. Victoria, a Russian model much younger than him, had already filed 2 restraining orders against Don. In March 2009, he pleaded no contest to 1 count of inflicting corporal injury on a spouse and was sentenced to 36 months of probation, along with fines and mandatory domestic violence counseling. Their divorce was finalized later that year, but the settlement came with a strange twist. Don was required to keep Victoria as the beneficiary on his life insurance policies, worth about $300,000. Friends later said Don was furious about this. He felt she had caused him nothing but pain, and the idea of leaving her money ate at him. But when he died, she collected every dime. Tragic end. By then, Don was already a man in decline. His health had been deteriorating for decades. Back in 1982, he underwent a brutal 21-hour brain surgery to correct a congenital blood vessel condition. He survived, but he admitted afterward he was never the same. For the last 15 years of his life, he suffered from severe seizures, a side effect of that surgery. His body was failing, and the medications didn't help much.
It has been reported that he was depressed and in poor health. Is that true? Was that true?
Very unhappy about some things that have gone on in his life, several years, and his health was failing.
On top of his health struggles, the bitter divorce from Victoria weighed heavily on him. In court documents, he had written, "I am 72 years old. I have significant health issues. I want to finalize this divorce before I die." His friend said the marriage had destroyed him mentally and emotionally. He seemed depressed, worn down, and broken. In the final 6 months of his life, things got worse. His pain grew unbearable. He was described as deeply depressed, not just from the physical suffering, but also from years of failed relationships, poor business decisions, and the feeling that he had lost control over his own life. In the early hours of February 1st, 2012, Don Cornelius picked up the phone and called his son, Tony. His voice was tired, defeated. He told Tony, "I don't know how long I can take this." Tony rushed to his father's home in Sherman Oaks as fast as he could, but he was too late. At around 4 a.m., police responded to reports of a shooting at Cornelius' home. They found him slumped in a chair with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but pronounced dead at 4:56 a.m. He was 75 years old.
We wanted to take a moment to note the passing of Don Cornelius, the creator of Soul Train. He died today in Los Angeles at 75, an apparent suicide.
The news hit hard, not just because a legend was gone, but because it revealed the pain behind the man who had once stood so tall. Tributes poured in. Musicians, dancers, and fans across the world celebrated him as the creator of something truly special. The movie project he was working on, the real story behind Soul Train, never got finished. Instead, his son Tony dedicated himself to honoring his father's name by creating a foundation to help others struggling with mental health and life's pressures. As Tony put it, many times out of tragedy comes help. Don Cornelius left this world the same way he lived it, mysterious, complicated, and unforgettable. His legacy is layered as the man himself, visionary and flawed, brilliant and broken, remembered both for the joy he gave millions and for the darkness that haunted him until the end.